welcome to DDOCast episode 572, recorded the weekend of September 6th. I'm your host, Patrick. I'm going to be by myself this week, and this show will not be live. Apologies, but scheduling and such just kind of makes it a lot easier for me to get it in by myself when I have some time. This week's screenshot. Vela is defeated on the hardcore server in the 430th screenshot of the week. This is actually a screenshot I took for a change. This was a group that we did Von 6 Elite on hardcore, and it was a lot of fun. And I thought it was worth taking a picture and sending it in just for fun. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next weekend, and you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. On the podcast this week, for our topic discussion, we'll be looking at Project Nemesis with Voodu. It's kind of our raid review / guide. So we'll talk a lot about that and kind of give you some idea on how to do that and whatnot. And of course, we'll talk about news. So let's talk about game news. There's not really much news this week to worth talking about, but they have been reading feedback from the players about the bloody footprints. This reward is not something you're the only person who can see it. It's not something that your friends can see. And so they said that we've been reading the feedback on this reward, and it seems likely we will go a different route in the future. My understanding is the reason this is client-side only is due to the way it is placing objects on the ground dynamically, which is different from the way, say, Creature Companions and Reaper Wings work. They're still looking into it, though, to see what, if anything, they can do. Let's see, bonus days for the week, plus 30% challenge rewards boost now through September 8th. That is not on the hardcore server, that's only on the main servers. The store news for the week, you can store more loot, 25% off of character banks, select shared banks and platinum storage, inventory space, and bags through September 12th. You can also get 5 rage potions with the coupon code RAGE through September 12th. Let's see, community news. The 349th Chronicle. This is the congratulations to DDO Central on the 5th anniversary. He's been doing a lot of stuff, kind of trying to coalesce and all of the DDO-related stuff, although it's branched out over the years into some other stuff as well. Then also, the Wandering Wyvern Tavern is the focal point of a small frontier community and a popular waypoint for travelers. As the party adventures investigates its affairs, they find possible allies and potential foes, but will they find more questions or answers? This is the teaser for D&D Kasplat on DDO Stream, which will be September 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That is the D&D night group that I am DMing, so we should have a lot of fun there. Even money if this show gets out before that, but if you listen to this before and are able to join us, it's great. D&D night always on 7 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. We have different groups doing all throughout the month. The comment, if you created your own dungeon, who or what would be the boss? Probably some sort of guy that's really just doing machinations behind the scenes kind of stuff. It's kind of what I tend to do in terms of kind of longer standing stuff myself. But he'll be in the back throwing stuff, taking advantage of terrain and stuff, and a whole bunch of pawns in front. Let's see, the guild for the week. Dragon Horde on Thelanis is a friendly guild of players who love to just do what we want when we want to. Our ship, the Dragon's Nest, has all the amenities you could ever want and is well maintained. They're a group of players that live and let live and use their ship to help others via onboard guild chests. We would like to say come on over and join us as we keep working and individually contributing to get the guild to that magic number of level 200. The only rules we have are be yourself, be kind, and don't bring any drama to our guild. And lastly, you need to log on to your tune at least once every 6 months or you get dropped. We don't do Dead Space for non-existent players. So feel free to contact a member to join or you can write Arias Red Dragon in game mailing system, and they'll welcome you home. Take care and see you in game. The fan site news, DDOCast got a shout out for episode 571. We talked about Too Hot to Handle last week. Let's see, BioBreak had a blog, as did Mickey's Delirium, talking about raids. And let's see, Bard Life, Dreaming with Even, Brighter Days Ahead, Fridays on Ice, DDOPL, and FreeDO all had episodes as well. And there's also last week's D&D night on the Edge of Evil, 1.5, so you can check that out as well. All of the D&D night stuff is also on a playlist on the DDO YouTube page as well, if you want to check out some of those. And we try to brand them all, so it's really easy to find one. If you just want to watch one or two of the series, should be pretty easy to do that for you. Let's see. DDOCast news. DDOCast Plat is still going. Wednesdays, we're working on heroic stuff. We're working on flagging for the Heroic Shroud, which we'll probably run at some point just for kicks. That is Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And that will bring us to Lightning Post. We did have someone write in last week about Too Hot to Handle. Raspberry Pi wrote in and said, Too Hot to Handle has already been nerfed enough. It was close to perfect on release, minus a couple of bugs. Its current difficulty is maybe a little easier than they'd like, but acceptable. It doesn't need any more nerfs. It'll get the power crept into easy mode within 2 years anyway. Look at Baba and Strahd. Puggers do R1 runs now on Kyber. As far as I'm concerned, normal difficulty for specifically Raid shouldn't be easy to do. Hard should be a major challenge in Elite for the Elite. The, quote, we paid for the content, so we deserve to complete, end quote, mindset going around the mobs is cancerous. I have some issues with that. One, Raid should be accessible. That's kind of my point. But I think I want to clarify, accessibility and easy are not the same thing, necessarily. What I mean by that is people, an average player should be able to go into any raid and have a reasonable chance to complete it if they follow the mechanics of the raid. It shouldn't be a raid should not be something that only the best people with insert 5 pieces of gear and or class abilities or whatever, those should not be the only people who can go in and complete a raid on normal. I'm not trying to say that the raids should be easy, but they should be accessible. I think is a better way of saying some of the stuff I've been saying about Too Hot to Handle in particular. I think the mechanics in Too Hot to Handle lend itself to be functionally difficult. But I cannot get to this point, and I do not believe that massive amounts of damage is challenging. I think it's just frustrating. And that's where I have an issue with Too Hot to Handle. The mechanics are fine, generally speaking, aside from the small thing, some small things I like to see tweaked about them, but that has more to do with the amount of damage you're taking than anything else. And I think power creep is a separate problem, I think. If a raid is easier in 2 years, I don't think that's the raid's fault. But I look at raids that have come out over the years, and if a raid's not popular in the first couple of months, it never gets popular. People don't run it. The reason why people are still running Baba and Strahd on R1 is because it was accessible and it was fun to do. That's why they're doing it. Yes, power creep has made that easier to do, and that's what happens with power creep. But again, that's a separate issue to me. That's not the same thing as it being accessible. If it's not accessible now and people aren't running it now, they're not going to be running it in 2 years. Period. That's just how it works. We saw that with Titan. We saw that with Abbott. We saw that with riding the Storm out. People aren't running it at the beginning. They're not going to run it later. So, and I don't want to see that. I like raiding. I like seeing a lot of pugs raiding, and that's what I want to see. So that's why I'm speaking that. So, But Raspberry wants it to be harder. I don't have an issue with harder raids, but you're never going to convince me that more damage and high amounts of damage is challenging. It's just frustrating. So that will wrap up the show for the news. So stay tuned. We'll catch Voodu joining me for talking about Project Nemesis. Thanks to him for helping me with the show, and thanks to everyone for listening to the show, and thanks to Raspberry for writing in. I know that's not necessarily a popular opinion, and I appreciate that you shared it, even though I don't agree with a lot of it. But I do appreciate folks writing in, and I enjoy getting different viewpoints out there as well. The current contributors as well, thanks to all those folks, a bunch of folks helping make this show happen week to week. And it's Standing Stone Games and Wizards of the Coast, and to Cyber Ears for hosting the podcast. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage, or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, you can email us at DDOCast@gmail.com. Hit us up at DDOCast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be part of this show, if you have a comment in this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, you can leave us a comment or you can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates at DDOcast on Twitter is the best place. So stay tuned for Project Nemesis. All right, welcome back. We are talking about Project Nemesis this week with my guest, Voodu Spice.
Hey, everyone.
Or Ginger Spice, if you prefer. I'm your host, Patrick. Last time we talked about Too Hot to Handle. This time we're going to talk about Project Nemesis, which is the other raid that came out with Sharn. There is no flagging for this raid. You do have to be able to get to the raid area, though, the staging area, which is inside of an explorer zone. Some ways you can get there. You can run, which means you have to drop group if you're in a raid party. You can use the Sharn boarding pass, or you can, once you've run all of the Sharn city quests, you can actually teleport straight there. That also flags you for Too Hot to Handle. So that's how you get there. Project Nemesis, kind of a big picture. There is a group that has broken into a vault of weapons, which seems to happen a lot in DDO. This is the what Severlin has called the anti-party that you run into in the city of Sharn. So the Gnoll, Urk, the Gnoll Gish, Urk, which is a goblin. There's a Minotaur, like Rugus, something like that. And Zolkish, which is a tiefling caster. And then I call him Q-Spiel because I don't actually know how to pronounce his name. But there's also the Radiant Idol guy. And then Helga, who is an artificer gnome. You run into them throughout the quests, some more than others, particularly Urk, who becomes irksome how many times he shows up, right? You have to stop this anti-party. So that's kind of the main gist of the raid. They're trying to break in to a vault, get some goodies. You have to stop them. So before we get in there, some things that you should bring. A tank is very helpful. More than one if you can. Can make it even more, particularly you get in higher difficulties. Curse pots, if you're running on a leader or reaper, are a must. Like an absolute must. Bring a full stack of curse pots. Then the generic stuff. You will need some range DPS. A good mix can be helpful. I would say probably more range than melee DPS is gonna, as many things in DDO might be a little more survivable. But there's a couple points where you definitely need some range DPS. There are puzzles; they're not hard. So I think they're a little more or less on par with the ones in Too Hot to Handle. They're not hard at all, but that's kind of what you need to make sure you're bringing. Full balance party. There are no traps. I think we could mention that. There's no traps. By the way, we didn't say this for Too Hot to Handle. Spoiler alerts incoming. Don't listen to this if you don't want to know all there is to know about this raid, or at least as much as we can tell you. Yeah, there you go. That kind of covers it all. Death Ward is helpful. You may find spell absorption to be helpful as well. Although mileage may vary. Anything else you can think of? We want to make sure we bring?
Well, just that you don't need any kind of elemental absorption.
Well, it could help. In certain spots, it could help.
You don't have to twist in energy sheath
you
for
do
this
not
raid.
have to twist in energy sheath for this raid. This raid is much easier to manage.
It is.
Okay, so when you get into the raid, there'll be a little entry area. We've seen these before, and then through there it takes you to kind of a balcony, and from this balcony, I really want to emphasize this: take a moment and look around, because you can literally see the entirety of the rest of, or 90% of the rest of the raid laid out before you. And this is a good time to get your bearings. You can see all of the bosses. Helga, the gnome, you don't actually fight her. She stays in her own little area, and she's working on opening a door, which you will see across you. That door has 4 rings in it. I have not actually failed the raid, but as the DM will let you know as those rings go away, and if they all go away, the 4 bands go away, then that's essentially where you're going to fail. Again, I'm not actually sure if you would, at what point that will actually fail at. Whether the 4th band goes away and you fail, or if there's another step, there's a 5th step beyond that. But that's the door you're trying to keep them from getting open. You can see the other 5 bosses there. Q-Spiel, the idol guy, he's in the middle of a barrier in the center. Then Urk, the Minotaur, Gish, the Gnoll, and Zolkish, the Tiefling, are kind of around him. You will have to deal with all 5 of those during the course of the raid as they go down. Also, as you look around the room, you'll see going towards the center 4 lit floor tiles, sets of tiles, going to 4 areas in the room. They're different colors. They correspond to the 4 elements: water, earth, air, and fire. If you look closely, each of those is lighting a rune. And if you look around the room, you will see 5 puzzles. Each of those 4 runes is on one of those puzzles and is providing light to those tile puzzles. So the standard tile puzzles that are all over the place in DDO. Each of those puzzles further has 4 dots on the sides of them. As light hits one of those dots, it traverses to the puzzle next to it, corresponding those lights. That's how the light for those puzzles travels around the room. You start off with all 4 of the side puzzles lit. There's a 5th puzzle, and its rune at the bottom corresponds with a control panel that powers a laser, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But you need to light that rune in order to power the laser. Within those puzzles, in the kind of the general field, are additional runes. If any one of those runes is lit, the raid will progress, and the artificer is able to work on getting through the door. So you have to.
The timer progresses.
Yeah, the timer progresses. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Thank you. So the first and kind of biggest priority of the raid is to prevent those puzzles from being solved. So you need to unsolve the center while simultaneously solving for the laser control. As you progress through the raid, you'll turn off those 4 batteries that I kind of talked about. They're called batteries in the nomenclature of the raid. And it becomes a little more challenging to light the laser, but more easy to keep the center runes from being lit. Periodically through the course of the raid until the final phase, the Artificer will summon constructors. They're the little constructy insect-looking things, and they work to solve the puzzle in order to solve the raid, to solve the door, make you fail the raid. Anything else we need to say about the puzzles?
I think you covered it.
The one thing that I do want to make sure is noted is, even if your puzzle doesn't have light on it, make sure it's unsolved for the runes in the center, because the light can traverse from other puzzles and then activate those runes. You can tell which runes are activated to the right of the door as you're looking at it. Below where Helga is, there's a panel that shows you which runes are lit. If you're really clever, you can learn which rune goes to which puzzle. I just look around to find the ones that are lit and unsolve them.
It's pretty easy to look around, yeah. Just one big room.
The first time that you get all of those runes off, she has a DM text that says that they've cut the power. So that's priority 1. That's the biggest thing that you have to manage throughout the raid until the final phase. It's pretty easy to handle. The constructors do not have a ton of hit points. Kill the constructor, unsolve the puzzle, move on. I have known some people to mistakenly believe that you have to light the side runes. You do not. That just traverses the power through the different puzzles. You only have to get power to your laser. That's it. Laser. If you look up on the ceiling of the room, there's a bunch of glowing blue. What do you want to call them? Crystals?
Nodes.
Nodes.
Okay.
Nodes is a good word. I like nodes. Nodes is better. And then there's a laser. It's a giant crystal thing.
Just like Titan.
Is it the same thing? Is it the same look?
Yep.
I don't even remember. It's been so long since I've gone to Titan.
Same laser from Titan.
You can move this thing around to any one of those node points using the control panel for the lasers. Control panel is pretty basic. There's a button in the center that fires the laser. There's a button left, right, up, and down. Relative to the panel, that's how it moves the laser. There's 3 rows, and what is it? 8, 9 columns? Like a 3x8, 3x10, something like that.
Something like that.
Not really important. But that's how you move the laser around. There's also a little face there. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's just part of the laser mechanics. It's a rescue button for later. So that's kind of the basic kind of layout of the room. Close to the laser control, there's a bunch of blue pads around the room, but there's one in particular that has a shaft of light going down from it. That's where the basic mechanic of you progressing through the raid as opposed to the anti-party. When you knock a boss down to 0, you have to hit them with the laser, which means you need to have them in a spot where you can hit them with the laser. And sometimes the laser will not agree with you. I've noticed this before. Sometimes it's a little buggy and doesn't work very well. But when you do, the gem of the laser will turn to a color corresponding to the element: red for fire, green for earth, blue for water, white for air. You have to then move the laser to this pad and shoot the laser onto yourself. You need to have someone from your party standing on the button, on that little spot, in order for anyone to get the buff that it will fire on you. Other than that, it doesn't seem to care. We've had 3 people on that laser, and one of them's gotten it, and I've gotten it from clear across the other side of the room. And the way it looks like on your character, there's a little circle around you with the corresponding color. To use
just
that,
like a targeting circle on you, yeah, and it's a different
but
color.
it's really small. It's not like the move out of the circles, which are in this raid, by the way.
No, it's kind of like when you target yourself and you have that white targeting circle.
Yeah.
But it's just a different color, and it's brighter.
It will also sometimes turn your avatar that color, depending on a few factors. It seems to turn bears green. I've noticed. Um, the batteries that I talked to you kind of at the beginning of the raid. There's the lit tiles on the floor, going to a little kind of section that's colored. If you have the white circle, you have to go to the white one, and that will send you to the air elemental room. You kill the air elemental, that depowers that rune and that puzzle. And you have to do that to all 4. That seemed like a lot. And we haven't even started talking about all the crazy stuff that all these bosses do. Would you like to add anything at this point? We've kind of covered the basic outline of what you need to do.
No, I mean, you're going to talk about, isolating the bosses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about the bosses specifically, but I want to kind of make sure we talk about kind of what the general goals are.
Yeah, I feel pretty good so far.
The elemental rooms, let's talk about those briefly. There's one elemental in each of the rooms. They throw those blow up circles all over the place with their corresponding elemental damage.
It's a big circle too.
Yeah.
It's definitely a chore to stay out of them. And this is very reminiscent of the elemental chambers in Lord of Blades optional. If you've done that, you go into the room, there's a big elemental, you got to kill it. Except now they're doing the like you said, the big rings that explode. You only have a couple seconds to get out of it, and this is the latest thing in DDO, right? For the last couple of years,
those circles, yeah.
Mobs put circles down on the floor. You need to get the hell out of them.
I will say that the thing that tends to get me with those circles is one, the fire room. They're again like too hot to handle. Red is everywhere, and the circle is the same shade of red. So if you're standing on kind of one of the islands, you may not see it. I've also been killed by the circle being tossed in the air at someone who's jumping, and it then being above my head and not seeing it, and then getting blown up. So that's something to be aware of, shall we say. If you can, send as much range power as you can into the air room, because that room sucks for a melee. But
well, you don't have the option of who to send into.
That's kind of the problem, right? Now,
that is a gripe of mine of this raid, is that the 3 people that can go into these elemental rooms get selected at random.
You do have some control. So what you can do is, if you put one person on that pedestal, they seem to always get it at least. So put a ranged person on there. But
I didn't realize that.
If you only have one, it seems to be pretty consistent about that. More than one, and it doesn't seem to care where the other ones go. The other thing you do, that face that I mentioned that's above the control panel for the laser, if you talk to it, you can tell it that you need to recover an essence, I think is the language that's used. And what that does is it takes the buff off of anyone who has it. It takes a little time, but it will put it back into the crystal and you can refire it. It will also pull anyone out of those rooms, dead or alive. So if that whole section of those 3 people die, you can pull them back into the main room and you can refire the laser. So if you don't like your combination, you can extract it and then refire it. That is something that you can do.
And if you get, like I said, the 3 people that can go in that room is selected at random. So if, both your healers and a tank get selected, that's not really the best combination of people to go in and beat down a giant elemental. So
it's true.
That's when you want to, pull those guys back out and redo it.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of mechanic. I do also want to mention with the laser, you do not have to wait for the laser to move to keep hitting the buttons to move it. You can move it side to side and up and down, and you can just click it a couple of times, and you can actually it's kind of fun. You can actually watch it like change its course as it's moving. It knows which dot you want it to go to. It just takes time for the laser to get there. As far as I know, you have to wait for the laser to get there before you fire, but you can direct it around a couple of times. So, let's see. After you collect the essence from 2 of the bosses, a horned devil will show up, called the emissary. You'll also start getting some devil trash at that point. neither of them seem to be too difficult to manage. Even in Reaper, the Horned Devil doesn't do anything you wouldn't expect him to do. The other bosses are far more dangerous and deadly than this guy, but you still have to manage it. Let's see. Once you get all the batteries done, the Q Spiel brings all 4 of the main bosses back. The Knoll, Urk, Zolkish, and the Minotaur. Helga runs away, so you don't have to worry about the puzzle anymore. You can no longer fail the raid by the door opening once you've completed the last battery. And then you have to beat them all down. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to the bosses still. So that kind of covers, I think, most of the not boss-specific mechanics. If you're running it on Elite or Reaper, Q-Spiel will constantly cast out a curse that hits everybody. My biggest gripe with this raid is actually this. The countdown timer will say 3 minutes. You have maybe 15 seconds before it zaps you, and it zaps you really hard. It will probably kill most players. I do not believe it is instant death, but I believe it's like 1,500 to 3,000 damage, depending on how high difficulty you're running on. So when that happens, everyone should yell curse, and you should all drink a curse pot or do something to remove a curse. Be careful you don't remove someone else's curse. That got me a few times. Like, curse! Oh, remove my curse! I just sent my curse to someone else and now I'm dead. It happens.
Make sure you have nobody else targeted when you drink your curse pot. If you're using the
Yep.
regular kind, if you're using the guild curse pots, then they will only target yourself.
Yeah, it's true. If you are someone who rages, make sure you get the guild curse pots because you can use them while raging. But yeah, that's super important. It will kill you, and if you're running on that high, that means you're sitting out with a 2-minute death timer. So, and that will severely inhibit your party's ability to do the raid. Other tactics. You do not have to go into the elemental rooms when you have the elemental buff. If you're running this raid on a higher difficulty, I recommend you get one boss down, collect his essence, and fire it on your party, and then kill the next guy and get his essence, but don't fire that essence. And then kill the emissary. At that point, then start sending people into the rooms. Because at that point, there's less going on. The main room is more stable because you only have 2 of the 4 bosses left at that point. And so you pass the emissary. So there's just you'll have some devil trash to deal with, but having only 2 of those bosses left over instead of 3 left over there's a big difference there. And that's something that when we were running this on Reaper, that's something that we found to be very helpful in managing. Right, shall we talk about the bosses? This is where it gets exciting.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to talk about first? Well, let's do this. What's your guys' preferred order? Kill order. We'll talk about them in that order, and then we'll talk about why you may want to choose a different order.
We like to do the Minotaur first, then the Knoll Gish, and then Urk, and then last the Tiefling.
That is actually the same order that we generally go for. Generally. we switch it up a lot, though. So the Minotaur. The Minotaur does the standard Minotaur charge. That's kind of helpful to know. It's so something you kind of gotta. He'll kind of push you around as that happens. The biggest thing with him, though, is he jumps in the air and then lands. And when he does that, he shoots out a large area of effect damage.
This is really dangerous.
Yes.
Uber dangerous.
If you're not killing him first, pull him into a corner away from everybody else. The reason why we like to kill him first is because that can kill a lot of people. They can kill them really quickly. The tank will probably survive. If that kills the tank, you probably need a bigger tank. but you do kind of have to manage that.
You got to jump when he jumps.
Yeah.
And then you can avoid it.
It's a little finicky. I have definitely, from my perspective, been in the air when he lands and still gotten killed. Feather fall, I think, helps because it keeps you in the air longer. But other than that, best of luck to you. Kill him as quick as you can.
We have really good luck with jumping, but yeah, you're right. It is finicky. I mean, if you're lagging at all or anything, then yeah, the timing can be off, and you really, as soon as he jumps, you got to be in the
Jump.
air.
Gish the Knoll, he does this whirlwindy attack, but that doesn't seem to connect very reliably to people not the tank. But he does reduce your PRR and your AC, which can be a problem for a tank.
Doesn't he reduce heal amp as well?
That may be true. I'm not sure.
Because I've noticed that something, I swear, reduces heal amp in there, and it just gets really, really hard to heal the longer
might
he's
be
around.
That. I believe there is a disease mechanic associated with him as well, but I haven't noticed it or gotten a really good handle on that myself yet. When we if we're running a higher difficulty and we've got 2 tanks, a lot of times we'll kill the Knoll first and get him down off the second tank and have our beefier tank handling the Minotaur kind of off in a corner so people don't get jumped on. Urk, probably familiar with Urk. He floats around on one of those source sleds. He does a pretty good chunk of damage with his ranged. He also does the that blue homing circle. I have not. Some people have told me that you can hide behind a pillar from that. I prefer to just keep moving. But that mechanic is pretty basic. He is tricky to pin down because he's in the air. You have to range him. You can't melee him for the most part. Except for when he initially spawns. You can melee him then, but other than that, you have to range him. He's got the fewest hit points, though, so that's not as big of a concern. But he moves in 2 moves all the time. So he's actually the easiest to line up because he always stays lined up with one of the points of the laser. But he'll move and immediately move again. So when he moves, wait for his second move to kind of get an idea of where he's going. Zolkish is a caster. He casts all manner of spells. The one that'll really get you probably is Prismatic Spray. The Violent Beam will get you. And that seems to go through some versions of Death Block, at least. So that's something to be kind of a watchful eye on. If you've got his aggro, a Spell Absorption might be a good plan for you. You can also hide behind pillars that are around the room to kind of help keep him off you. He is a pain to line up with the laser. If you melee him, he D-doors away. So you kind of best to get him in the spot you want and then range him down so he doesn't D-door to a different spot. Anything I missed?
Just that Urk can be horribly irritating if he doesn't seem to, you park the laser somewhere that he visits, but we haven't figured out a good way to try to sort of make him go back there. Sometimes, like, we've sat there for 15 minutes or more sometimes waiting for him. You get him prepped and you wait for him to move on to the laser, and then you kill him real quick and he gets onto the laser, but sometimes he's just horribly, horribly uncooperative. Now, I will also say that hiding behind a pillar I found it to be very effective. If he targets you with his targeting thing, he's going to throw his, like, purple magical javelin at you, and you can see it coming at you. It's very slow moving and you can't outrun it, but you got to keep moving, or as long as you get that pillar between you and the javelin. So it's not just being near a pillar. You got to make sure that the pillar is between you and the javelin, and then it will block it.
Yeah, we move to him. We move the laser to him, but it's that double move, right? Like, you can see him move and then getting an idea where he's going to go, and he can kind of go there. I try to, if you're going for him, you can kind of move the laser to the center and then see where he goes on that. He moves, he'll stop for a beat and then move again. Once he starts moving again, you kind of move. You can get pretty good at kind of predicting at least sort of where he's going to be. And he'll stay there for long enough that you can get the laser over him, then you can kill him, generally speaking. So those are the 4 bosses. They don't have a lot of mechanics with them, but you got to kind of manage it. Now, Q-Spiel will be there casting spells the whole time. He tends not to be that big of a problem until the end, and even then, he seems to be the least dangerous of the bosses by a long shot. When you do get to the end phase, what happens is if you beat him down enough, he'll actually suck the life out of the other party members of his party to get his health back up to full. He does that at about 25%. Our current preferred strategy of my guild is to kind of just beat the snot out of him, and then when something else gets close, we'll go kill it. I personally kind of prefer dealing with some of the other bosses instead, because I think you get a better bang for your buck on your DPS by taking them out. My preferred order at the end is actually Urk first, because when he comes back in that last phase, the melee can actually get him, and he has so few hit points. You can really blitz him down really good. And then we go Minotaur, Gnoll, Caster, and then the boss. So that's kind of how I like to run that last fight. If you get into higher difficulties, you can move, get the guys spread out a little bit more. Use more than one tank to kind of try to spread them out, or a kiter if you need to.
Yeah, you definitely want to isolate whichever guy you're working on, and have the party and a main tank focus on them, and then like you said, if you have another tank, they can pull the rest of the mobs away.
Yep. If you are using more than one tank, I would put the beefiest tank on the Minotaur in the first phase and kill the Gnoll first. As far as the kill order in this last phase, it doesn't super matter. I try to get Urk out of the way because he's squishy and you can kill him pretty quick relative to the other ones. Especially when you get the melee on him right at that start. On hard, we can usually kill him before he even moves. A nice thing about having them bunched up together is you can use improve precise shot and burst damage. If you feel really comfortable with your tanks, maybe you want to kill Urk first in the first phase just to get him out of the way because he's hard to control. Or the Caster, same thing. As he ports around, he kind of shifts aggro. Maybe you want to kill them first. They're harder to get the laser on them, which is why we tend to leave them till later, but those are options. Anything else you want to say about the raid? I think we kind of mostly covered it.
Yeah, just some personal gripes. It just, you step in, it really just kind of feels like the room is a copy and paste out of Master Artificer. Even though the raid is not like Master Artificer, I feel like I'm in Master Artificer.
It is House Canon again, so
Yeah, and then when you do the elemental chambers, that's a copy and paste out of Lord of Blades. So it just feels really copy and pasty for the layout and the elemental chambers, even though what you're doing is not the same as those for the main part of the raid. But I kind of it just doesn't sit right with me that you walk in and it looks like you're in the same chamber as Master Artificer.
I really like the raid. I love that it has I have gone round in circles about which one is the best one to kill first and why. And
I feel middle of the road about this raid.
I love that you can really kind of experiment with your kill order and some tactics in that regard, which is kind of fun to me. But I like it. So I like it's odd for a raid in that it kind of gets easier as it goes along for the most part. But all right, there we go. That's Project Nemesis. You want to give a shout out to your channel and stuff?
Yeah, you can visit me on YouTube on my channel Voodu Spice, where I have over 800 videos, quest guides, raid guides, crafting tutorials, fun series, all kinds of good stuff. And then you can visit me on my Twitch channel, Voodu Spice, where we're live streaming nearly every day.
And keep an eye out for a couple months for teaching raids too.
After the new year.
Yeah. That's only a couple months away, man. It's September already.
4 months.
It probably feels like more time for you because you've only been not doing teaching raids for a month and a half.
Yeah.
Well, Well, thanks for joining to Voodu. Thanks for listening. You can join us next time. We'll have a brand new topic to discuss. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can also find the show notes, past shows, and more on our website. And you can find us on social media and follow us for latest cast updates. I'm at DDOCast on Twitter. If you'd like to join the discussion, you can leave a comment. You can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.